Before we dive in, hit that like button, drop a comment, and subscribe for more jaw-dropping stories where humanity proves just how dangerous we really are. Trust me, by the end of this one you'll never look at a tiger the same way again. The glassy floor of the Interstellar Apex Conference shimmered beneath Captain Rafe Calder's boots, reflecting the kaleidoscope of alien delegates in warped, rippling light. Above them, banners written in 100 scripts drifted on invisible air currents, each one proclaiming the glory of a species' deadliest predator. Some roared from holograms, some hissed, some bared jaws studded with obsidian teeth. The hall smelled faintly of ozone, metal polish, and the musk of creatures brought from across the galaxy. Rafe kept his stride steady. Earth's banner, stark white with the blue crest of the United Nations Interstellar Division, hung limp and unremarkable in the far corner. The other species hadn't even bothered to hide their amusement. He'd caught it in their glances, a mix of pity and disdain, the unspoken conclusion that humanity's so-called apex beasts were little more than decorative relics from a quaint pre-spaceflight past. He reached the central dais where a scaled colossus waited. Zerath Prime of the Vorgoth dwarfed him by 2 heads, his armor plates glistening under the hall's light. The Vorgoth apex predator, the Wrathkaer, loomed behind him in a containment field, each breath like the exhale of a forge. Its talons could gut a shuttle. Its eyes glowed an ugly molten orange. "Captain Calder," Zerath rumbled, his voice reverberating through Rafe's chest. "I am told you've brought no specimen. That is, prudent. It would be tragic to watch one of your docile quadrupeds be torn apart before the opening meal." Ripples of laughter slithered through the assembly. On a nearby holoscreen, someone had pulled up images of Earth's predators, the lion, the wolf, the grizzly, and scaled them beside the towering Wrathkaer. The size disparity was almost insulting. The images cycled faster, until the crowd was roaring with laughter at a video of a house cat pawing at a string. Rafe's jaw flexed, but he didn't bite back. Not yet. Beside him, Dr. Ethan Voss adjusted the collar of his field jacket, his sharp eyes scanning the crowd. Ethan was a scientist first, soldier second, but in moments like this, Rafe saw the flint under the calm. The man wasn't immune to the sting of ridicule. "They're not entirely wrong," Ethan murmured under his breath. "Our biggest predators can't match those things in mass or armor. But they're forgetting one thing." Rafe didn't need to ask what. The same thought had been gnawing at the back of his mind since they'd stepped into this hall. Power wasn't only measured in size. The announcer, a lithe, 6-limbed being draped in shimmering gold sashes, silenced the crowd. "Delegates, the Vorgoth have issued a challenge to the humans. A traditional gladiator's hunt, apex versus apex. No weapons. No interference. Survival determines supremacy." Gasps, then cheers. The hunt was not ceremonial, it was brutal. The predators were released into an arena spanning kilometers, seeded with hazards. Combat between beasts was inevitable. Sometimes, if tempers ran hot, the handlers joined the fight. Rafe's eyes locked on Zerath's. "And if we accept?" The alien's smile was a slow, toothy knife. "If your predator survives, Earth will be recognized as a worthy contributor to the Apex Archive. If it falls," he let the pause hang, then shrugged. "It will confirm what the galaxy already knows, that your apex is a myth." Ethan leaned closer, voice low. "They're trying to bait us into humiliation." "Yeah," Rafe said, never looking away from Zerath. "And I'm about to take it." The hall erupted in chatter as the challenge was formalized. Rafe signed the acceptance with a flourish, the alien stylus feeling too light in his hand. He knew what he was committing to, knew the risks, and yet a certain image had already taken root in his mind. Not a lion. Not a bear. Not even a wolf. A tiger. The thought had started days ago during the voyage to the conference. Tigers weren't the largest predator on Earth, but they were the perfect balance of muscle, stealth, and lethal precision. Where a lion might roar and charge, a tiger stalked, calculated, and struck with surgical finality. You could not train a tiger to obey. You could only convince it to tolerate your presence, and pray that was enough. He remembered the first time he'd seen Raja, pacing in his enclosure at the Bengal Preserve. The way the animal's amber eyes had pinned him, unblinking, had felt less like being watched and more like being assessed. Those eyes hadn't said "I fear you." They'd said "I'm deciding if you're worth the effort to kill." As the session adjourned, the alien delegates drifted away in clusters, already speculating on how quickly Earth's offering would be slaughtered. No one asked what predator Rafe would bring. Perhaps they thought it didn't matter. Ethan broke the silence. "You're serious about this?" "I am." "You're going to take an Earth tiger into a galaxy-class hunt against engineered killing machines." Rafe glanced at him, a slow grin spreading. I'm going to let a tiger be a tiger. That's the point. Ethan exhaled, almost a laugh, though there was no humor in it. Then we'd better start working out how to give him an edge. They returned to the human quarters, where the corridor's hum felt too quiet after the cacophony of the hall. Rafe stood before the viewport, watching the stars burn cold and far. Somewhere down there, in a preserve surrounded by humid green forests, Raja slept in dappled sunlight, every muscle coiled even in rest. Let them laugh, Rafe said softly as if to the glass. They won't be laughing when they hear him roar. The ship's comm pinged with the official challenge schedule. 1 week until the hunt. 1 week to prepare a predator that could not care about human pride, but whose nature might just rewrite what the galaxy thought it knew about Earth. And as Rafe turned away from the stars, already mapping the impossible plan in his head, Ethan muttered the only question that mattered. Assuming we survive training him, how are you going to get a tiger into the arena without him deciding we are the prey? Under a haze of early morning mist, the Bengal Preserve's gates slid open with a slow metallic sigh. The transport cradle waited just beyond, flanked by 2 reinforced cargo handlers whose armor looked more suited to riot suppression than wildlife work. Rafe stepped out first, boots sinking slightly into damp soil, and felt the air change, thick with the smell of earth, water, and something older. Something watching. Ethan joined him, eyes scanning the treeline as the preserve's director, an angular man with sun-darkened skin and a voice like worn gravel, approached. He's in a mood today, the director said without preamble. Didn't touch his meal last night. Been pacing since before sunrise. Rafe almost smiled. Good. I want him sharp. The director shook his head slowly. You don't want a tiger sharp, Captain. You just have to hope you're not standing in the way when he is. He gave a short, low whistle and the brush ahead stirred. A ripple of muscle and orange-black stripes slid from shadow to light. Raja moved with the soundless inevitability of a tide. Each paw fall was deliberate, unhurried, as though the world's pace belonged to him alone. His head swung toward them and those amber eyes caught Rafe again, assessing, appraising, dismissing. The tiger wasn't curious. He was deciding whether this meeting mattered enough to remember. Ethan shifted his stance, instinctively respectful. I've studied 100 apex species, he murmured, and none of them make you feel like this. Raja padded closer until the last of the undergrowth brushed against his flanks. The handlers stiffened, hands resting on tranquilizer gear they prayed they wouldn't need. Rafe didn't move. He let the tiger close the gap until only 2 meters of damp grass lay between them. You know why I'm here, Rafe said quietly. His voice wasn't coaxing. It wasn't a command. It was a statement, offered as if the tiger understood, or would choose to ignore. For a long moment Raja simply stood there, tail swaying in slow arcs. Then without a sound he circled, passing Rafe's left side and brushing past Ethan, who froze under the weight of that liquid gaze. The tiger vanished into the brush again, leaving only the muted rustle of disturbed leaves. The director exhaled. If you can keep him in that cradle without him deciding to dismantle it from the inside, I'll be impressed. By the end of the hour Raja was secured, though the term felt optimistic. The transport cradle was less a cage and more a layered fortress of alloy mesh and kinetic dampers, designed to survive atmospheric re-entry. The tiger had settled inside with the air of one tolerating an inconvenience, his massive head resting on his forepaws, eyes half-lidded but never still. On the UNSS Resolute, they converted an entire cargo bay into Raja's training environment. The space was lined with simulation panels capable of projecting any terrain, any climate, any sense signature the handlers programmed. Ethan had loaded it with dense alien jungle models, complete with synthetic pheromone trails mimicking known apex species from across the galaxy. Rafe stood with his arms crossed as Ethan adjusted the settings. You think scent training's enough? No, Ethan said without looking up. I think it's all we can do. You don't train a tiger to fight. You give him reasons to decide the fight's worth it. The first simulation began with a low hum, the walls flickering into the green-black of a Vorgoth rainforest. A shimmer of heat haze drifted across the air as invisible projectors released faint chemical cues. Raja's ears flicked forward. He rose in one fluid motion and melted into the tall grass the instant it materialized, his stripes blending so perfectly with the projected foliage that even Rafe, standing barely 10 meters away, lost sight of him. A drone, shaped like a scaled quadruped and armored to Vorgoth specifications, lumbered into view on the far side. It moved with mechanical certainty, scanning the simulated brush with optical sensors. Raja didn't charge. He waited, tail low, breathing steady. When the drone's head turned away, he exploded from cover with a force that rattled the viewing platform. The impact knocked the drone onto its side, and Raj's jaws clamped around its neck joint. Metal groaned under the pressure. "Fast," Rafe muttered. Ethan's tone was almost clinical. "He's measuring his strike, finding the one point where armor gives before committing. That's not instinct alone. That's choice." The next week was a blur of variations. Rocky alien highlands, swamps with carnivorous flora simulations, shifting mist fields that distorted scent trails. Raja adapted to each without hesitation, never repeating the same approach twice. The alien sense seemed to stir something predatory in him, a sharpened edge beyond his usual hunting behavior. Between sessions, Rafe kept his distance. Not out of fear, though anyone who claimed not to feel it around Raja was lying, but out of respect for the animal's autonomy. Tigers didn't bond like dogs. They didn't seek approval. At best, they allowed proximity without violence, and that was enough. News of Earth's chosen predator leaked after only 3 days. Across alien networks, the reaction was immediate and merciless. Edited clips of Raja were overlaid with carnival music. Cartoons depicted him batting playfully at a Rathcair's tail before being swallowed whole. The Vorgoth media ran a comparison chart showing the Rathcair's mass beside Raja's, a visual meant to end the debate before it began. Rafe didn't respond. Public silence was part of the strategy. The longer they laughed, the more devastating the shock would be when the laughter stopped. 2 days before departure, Ethan ran one last simulation, a composite environment merging all predicted terrain types of the arena. The alien scent profile was tuned to maximum complexity, layered with interference signals to mask real targets. It was, in theory, the most difficult hunt they could create. Raja's behavior changed almost immediately. He moved slower, circling the perimeter as though mapping the space in his head. Every pause was deliberate. Every step avoided terrain that would give him away. The drone prey didn't even register his presence until he was already on its back, jaws crushing its power core in less than 5 seconds. Ethan exhaled slowly. "I think he's ready." Rafe didn't take his eyes off the tiger. "No. He's just decided he's done humoring us." On the morning of departure, the cargo bay was eerily quiet. The cradle's restraints locked with heavy finality, and Raja lay within, silent but alert. The hum of the ship's engines deepened as the Resolute lifted from the Preserve's landing pad, climbing toward the carrier vessel that would take them to the hunt staging world. Ethan joined Rafe at the viewport, watching the green of the Preserve shrink into nothing. "You think he knows? That he's leaving?" Rafe asked. "Yeah. That there's a fight coming? Maybe." Tigers don't dwell on what's ahead. They dwell on what's in front of them. When it matters, he'll know. As the ship cleared the atmosphere, the comms pinged with a transmission from the hunt's officiators. Final match parameters. Predators would be released at staggered intervals into the arena, a living biome the size of a small continent. No retrieval until the hunt concluded. Deaths would be broadcast live to every subscribed network in the sector. When the staging world signal beacon appeared on the ship's long-range sensors, the comm crackled with the voice of the hunt's master of ceremonies, announcing their arrival to the gathered spectators. In the cradle, Raja lifted his head, ears forward, as if hearing something beyond human perception. His tail flicked once, and his gaze fixed on the unseen planet ahead. Rafe felt a slow, almost involuntary smile. Whatever came next, Raja wasn't going into that arena as a representative of humanity. He was going in as himself. And that, Rafe suspected, was exactly why they had a chance. Rafe closed the message without a word. Ethan glanced at him. "You ready for this?" Rafe's gaze flicked toward the cradle, where Raja's eyes gleamed in the low light. "I'm not the one who needs to be ready." The Resolute slid into the dark between stars, carrying with it a predator who owed nothing to the men escorting him, and whose nature might just be enough to silence an entire galaxy. The arena's atmosphere was heavy with heat and the scent of alien flora, a humid breath that clung to every surface and muted the hum of the containment fields. Rafe stood on the observation deck, the transparent wall stretching before him like a pane of liquid. Beyond it, the biome spread into shadow and color, towering trees with bark like polished stone, leaves broad enough to cover a man, and pools of dark water that reflected a fractured sky. Somewhere in that living labyrinth, predators waited for the hunt to begin. Somewhere Raja would soon walk. Ethan adjusted the wrist display linked to Raja's tracking implant, its signal pinging a calm, steady pulse. "They're releasing him third," he said. 2 species ahead of him, the Rathcair last. "Good," Rafe replied, eyes fixed on the alien jungle. Gives him something to measure before the main event. From the far side of the arena, the first gate opened. A creature the size of a hover tank stepped into the light. The Corsair beast, all plated hide and triple-jointed legs that moved with a disconcerting smoothness. Its handler signaled, and the beast let out a low, reverberating call before melting into the foliage. The second gate followed minutes later, releasing something lithe and sinuous, its pale skin almost translucent, ribbed with spines. The crowd roared at each release, the sound filtered but still powerful enough to vibrate through the glass. Ethan glanced at Rafe. You think he understands what's about to happen? He understands there's a hunt, Rafe said. That's all he needs. The third gate rolled open, revealing Raja. For a heartbeat, he simply stood there, amber eyes scanning the shifting wall of green before him. The artificial sunlight caught in his coat, igniting the orange into flame. Then he stepped forward, each movement unhurried, as though he owned the ground he walked on. In the stands, laughter rippled through the alien audience. To them he was small, a handsome creature perhaps, but not one built to survive against the engineered apex predators of the galaxy. Rafe let them laugh. The laughter would buy Raja the one thing no simulation could give him: underestimation. Raja slipped into the foliage without a sound. His tracking signal began its slow arc across Ethan's display, weaving between heat blooms from other wildlife seeded into the arena. His path wasn't direct. It looped and curved, doubling back at odd intervals. He's mapping it, Ethan murmured, creating a mental model of the territory before committing. The first kill came not from Raja, but from the Corsair beast. Its armored bulk crashed into the translucent predator with devastating force, snapping its spine in the opening minutes. The crowd roared approval, the sound like a tide slamming against a cliff. Raja's signal shifted, drawing nearer to the site of the kill, then halting. Rafe could imagine him crouched low, scenting the air. Minutes passed. The Corsair beast dragged its kill toward a shaded hollow to feed. That was when Raja moved, a slow, deliberate flank, staying downwind. He didn't attack the Corsair. Instead, he circled wide and vanished again, leaving only silence where the first predator's victory had echoed. Ethan frowned. He's letting it live? Rafe shook his head. He's letting it think it's safe. For nearly half an hour, Raja's signal traced an unpredictable pattern through the biome. The crowd grew restless, their attention snapping between his slow hunt and the empty gates where the Wrathcair still waited. When the fourth gate finally rolled open, the arena shifted. The Wrathcair stepped out like a war machine, its armored plates catching the light in jagged glints. Its head swung from side to side, tasting the air with a forked tongue. The roar it released shook leaves from the canopy. Even through the observation glass, Rafe felt the sound in his ribs. The Wrathcair plunged into the jungle with the confidence of a creature that had never lost. Smaller predators scattered before it. The Corsair beast lifted its head mid-feed, growling low, but the Wrathcair ignored it for now, focused on scent trails it found more promising. Raja's signal moved again, subtly adjusting course to match the Wrathcair's approach. Ethan's brows drew together. He's shadowing it, using its noise to mask his own movement. It was a dangerous strategy. One slip and he'd be in the Wrathcair's strike range. But Raja's pace was patient, his position always just beyond the blind spots in the alien beast's scanning sweeps. The crowd began to notice. The laughter quieted into murmurs as the feed switched to split-screen views. The Wrathcair's aggressive, ground-churning advance and the tiger's near-invisible glide through shadow. The contrast was stark. One dominated the space by force, the other claimed it without being seen. The first confrontation was almost anticlimactic. The Wrathcair blundered into the Corsair beast, and the two apex predators collided in a clash of armor and force. The fight was savage, metallic screeches and the wet crack of impact filling the broadcast. Raja didn't intervene. He vanished into deeper cover, letting the two titans exhaust each other. Minutes later, the Wrathcair emerged victorious but bleeding from shallow gouges in its armor. It roared again, less in triumph than in challenge. The sound carried through the canopy, scattering smaller life forms and shaking loose a cloud of luminous spores. Raja moved within that drifting veil, his coat dissolving into the fractured light. Ethan's voice was a low murmur. He's right behind it. On the screen, the Wrathcair's head lifted, nostrils flaring. It turned sharply, scanning the dense undergrowth. Nothing moved. Then, in a blink, Raja was airborne, a blur of muscle and claws arcing toward the alien beast's exposed flank. The impact drove them both into the dirt in a spray of leaf litter. The Rathcair's talons slashed, scoring furrows into Raja's side. The tiger twisted, his jaws closing on the armored ridge of the creature's neck. Metal met muscle in a contest of leverage, neither giving ground. The Rathcair bucked violently, slamming Raja into a tree trunk hard enough to splinter it. The crowd was on its feet now, the earlier laughter replaced by a rising wave of shouts. The commentators spoke in rapid bursts, analyzing the impossible, that the smaller predator was still locked in, still fighting. Raja released his grip, dropping away from a snapping set of fangs and circled, tail low, ears flat. The Rathcair charged. The tiger didn't retreat. He feinted left, then spun right, his claws hooking into the softer seam where armored plate met muscle. His hind legs kicked, driving deep, and the Rathcair bellowed in pain. Ethan's fingers tightened on the console. He's targeting the joint. That's deliberate. The alien beast staggered, one leg partially disabled. Raja backed off, panting, blood striping his coat in crimson and black. He didn't rush the kill. He waited, watching as the Rathcair tried to pivot, its movement compromised. And then, without warning, the feed cut to static. A power surge from the arena's containment grid forced a pause, the image freezing on Raja's silhouette against the alien undergrowth. The crowd erupted in protest, demanding the feed return. Rafe said nothing, eyes locked on the frozen image of the tiger, poised, patient, and very much alive. When the signal flickered back, the Rathcair was gone from the frame. Only Raja remained, standing over something just out of sight, his sides heaving. He lifted his head toward the observation deck, as if aware of the millions watching, and held that gaze for a long, unbroken moment. Ethan swallowed. I think he's just decided how this ends. The Rathcair's body lay twisted among shattered foliage, steam rising from deep rents in its armor. Blood, dark, viscous, alien, seeped into the soil, pooling around claw marks that no predator in the galaxy had ever left before. Raja stood over the carcass, head bowed, sides heaving, his amber eyes fixed on the distant sound of the crowd beyond the containment field. The silence in the arena was almost unnatural. No creature moved. Even the alien birds had gone quiet. Rafe descended from the observation deck's platform with deliberate steps, the security field parting at his approach. The heat and scent of the jungle closed around him instantly, the air heavy with the coppery tang of blood. Raja's head swung toward him, and for an instant those eyes locked onto his with the same cold precision they had the first day they'd met. The tiger's face and forelimbs were streaked with blood, some of it his own, but there was no sign of fatigue in his stance. He was still wound like a spring, ready to strike if anything else dared to move. Ethan followed a pace behind, his voice low but carrying in the quiet. He's not in a cooperative mood. Rafe didn't stop. He's not supposed to be. They closed the last few meters, careful not to cross into his immediate space. The tiger's tail lashed once, but he didn't growl or bare his teeth. He simply held his ground. Around them, the arena's field generators hummed faintly, the only reminder that there was still a separation between the hunt and the audience watching from every corner of the galaxy. Overhead, the announcer's voice, usually loud and theatrical, carried a note of awe. The human predator had done the impossible. It had not only survived against the galaxy's deadliest engineered beast but had dismantled it with surgical precision. Zerath Prime stepped into view on the far side of the field, descending the opposite ramp. His massive frame cast a jagged shadow over the Rathcair's body, and his slit-pupil eyes studied Raja for a long moment. The crowd hushed further as he walked to within a few paces of Rafe. When he spoke, his voice was lower than before, stripped of mockery. Your predator is worthy. Rafe met his gaze without flinching. I told you. Zerath's eyes slid to Raja again. He fights without hesitation. Without fear. But this, he gestured to the carcass at their feet. This was not strength alone. This was calculation. Patience. Precision. Exactly, Rafe said. And you thought that was weakness. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then Zerath bent his head, a fraction, in a gesture Rafe knew carried weight in Vorgoth culture. The galaxy will remember this. He turned and left without another word. The crowd erupted then, not in laughter or derision but in a low, rolling roar of approval. The commentary feeds blared descriptions of Raja's tactics, slowed replays of the killing strike, and expert analysis of the way he had dismantled the Rathcair's advantage piece by piece. The earlier ridicule was gone, replaced by a grudging respect that would be harder to earn than any trophy. Ethan exhaled, the tension in his shoulders finally easing. You know what's going to happen now, right? They'll study every second of that fight. Try to copy it. try to understand what makes him different. They won't be able to, Rafe said. Because they'll forget the one thing you can't replicate. He glanced at Raja, who had lowered his head to the carcass again, not to feed, but as if to confirm the kill was final. They'll forget what it means to be wild. The transport cradle arrived then, carried by a team who moved with the kind of careful respect usually reserved for unexploded ordnance. Raja didn't resist when they coaxed him toward it, though his eyes never stopped tracking the movement around him. Once inside, he settled into a sphinx-like posture, watching the world with that same unreadable intensity. As they guided the cradle back toward the UNSS Resolute, Rafe caught sight of the broadcast screens overhead. Alien commentators spoke in dozens of languages, some replaying the fight from thermal views, others diagramming his approach vectors and attack patterns. A split screen showed the moment Raja leapt for the Wrathkayer's throat alongside the initial mocking footage from before the hunt. The contrast spoke louder than any victory speech. In the staging bay, Rafe approached the cradle's viewport. Raja's gaze met his again, and for a moment, the chaos outside faded. There was no bond in that look, no sentimentality. Just the quiet recognition between two beings who had done what they set out to do. Rest, Rafe said softly. You've earned it. The hatch closed, sealing Raja away from the noise of the galaxy. Ethan came to stand beside him, watching the handlers secure the cradle. You realize this changes everything. The next time humanity walks into one of these conferences, they won't see us as an afterthought. That's the idea, Rafe replied. But his eyes stayed on the sealed cradle, and his thoughts were less about politics and more about the simplicity of what had just happened. No speeches, no negotiations, no engineered enhancements, just nature, pure and unfiltered, proving its own worth. When the Resolute detached from the station and angled toward the black between stars, the roar of the crowd still echoed faintly through the comms. Rafe stood in the quiet of the observation deck, the void stretching endlessly ahead. Somewhere behind them, the arena would be dismantled, the Wrathkayer's carcass dissected, and 1,000 theories spun from a single fight. Ethan leaned on the railing, his reflection faint in the glass. Do you think they'll challenge us again? Maybe, Rafe said. But they won't laugh when they do. He let the silence linger, feeling the weight of the moment settle into something lasting. The galaxy had seen what Earth's apex could do when unleashed, and it was a truth no broadcast could soften. As the stars slid past, Rafe allowed himself one last thought before the work ahead claimed him again. Not about glory or politics or reputation, but about a tiger pacing through alien foliage, silent as the turning of the world, and the look in its eyes when it chose the moment to strike. It was the kind of look you didn't forget. And now neither would they.